This is Bill Newman, WHMP.
Welcome to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio, with Poet Laureate Rich Michelson and a very special guest. Rich?
Hi, Bill. So tonight at Smith College, Stoddard Hall Auditorium, I really encourage you all to show up. 7:30. Joan Houlihan is my guest. Welcome, Joan.
Hello.
And Joan will be reading her poetry tonight at 7:30. At 4 o'clock this afternoon in Wright Hall, the Poetry Center, there's a little Q&A, I think, with you.
Yeah.
And then on Thursday, you're going to be giving a craft lecture titled Ghost in the Machine, the Autobiography of a Pronoun. And that's at 4:30 this Thursday, also at the Poetry Center, Wright Hall. Lots going on. You're busy. You just flew in from AWP last night. So this is the life on the road of a poet. And I just quickly...
This is life on the road of a successful and
poet.
well-known poet, as opposed to those of us who sit alone in our studies with blank pieces of paper.
I do a lot of that.
Right. So you have a brand new book out from Tupelo Press, who did your last book as well. This is your fourth book, and it's called I,
Yes.
but spelled A-Y, I.
That's right.
And the previous book with Tupelo is The Us.
Mm-hmm.
And I tell you, when I got these books and looked a little bit, they're beautiful and the writing is exquisite.
Thank you.
So what I was anticipating just from the title, The Us, it's kind of like it's almost like a play in a sense. The poems build on each other. You have characters, the us, you have them. I was expecting actually almost like a political more treatise, especially maybe I've got Russia, Crimea in my mind these days. But instead, the poems were almost, to me, mythic. They went deeper than, just a political, a STEM thing. You're almost dealing with the elemental forces of human nature, if I can say that. Is that fair? Is that what you're hoping to do?
Yes, that's a really good description, actually. And I'm glad you brought up the political part. I wondered if people would connect U.S. ever with us, which I never really wanted to do, but I thought that would be a possibility. No, you're right. It's mostly allegorical. A lot of it has, come from the drive to feel and understand what's under language more than what's the rhetoric that's spoken, say, in a political way. So there's a kind of ancient element to it.
All right. Well, you're going right to our guts in a sense. I was thinking, I don't know if these are proper comparisons, but when I was reading, I was thinking a little bit of like Ted Hughes's Crow, or going back to Beowulf, where you really, in a sense, are getting to the elemental forces of human nature. Your language is not traditional. Talk a little bit about that.
The language is actually the story. The I guess you could say it's an epic in a way, or a somewhat of an epic. Has grown out of the need to reach a different language. So the story came after the discovery, my own discovery, that in order to reach what I wanted to reach, I needed to somehow change language, but still make it an understandable language. Okay, so I'm still in English, but I've changed in syntax and in various phraseologies in order to reach back.
All right. Let's have you read a poem. Before I do that, I want to say you're listening to NPR, Northampton Poetry Radio on WHMP. And our guest is Joan Houlihan, who's reading tonight at Smith College, 7:30 p.m., Stoddard Hall Auditorium. And let's pick a poem from The Us.
Yes. The Us came first. The I is a sequel. I is a character in The Us, and who breaks away. So I'll read a poem from The Us, the group. Froze by winter blast. Froze by winter blast, us could not grip on meat or crust. Ours fingers blackened down to all the hand. And many fell that time, and so were fewer count of us coming into weather, loosened snow, water falling down around the stones. Us heard command in that. Rose again the light, and rooted things crept out, greenly took up spots between the snow. What good there were for us showed in starries round the moon. By roar and rush and smell of brine us found the sea and stood along. Scattersticks and wobblestones gave command to go by boat and find by water home.
Beautiful, actually. Do you have? It's almost like a biblical cadence in some ways. What's your background in that?
Well, I have an Irish Catholic background, and I did grow up in a very religious household and went to a parochial school and spent a lot of time absorbing those
Right.
rhythms and those cadences from Latin and also from the Psalms and from, hymns and all of that,
Right.
that kind of
Is
cadence.
there some Hopkins in?
Hopkins is
it-
certainly a big influence
Mhm.
for me, yeah.
It-
I mean, being in a Catholic school, the literature that was allowed, let's
Mhm.
say, really had to come with a religious underpinning. So Hopkins was an early influence.
All right.
Yeah.
It's. I mean, the poems are really. I mean, they really punch you in a hard. I think it's just absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
I was also just became aware because when I was reading these books of some of your criticism as well, and I have to say that you take no prisoners. Your criticism has been you write for a few magazines, Boston.
Yeah, I wrote a series of essays called the Boston Comment for a while, about 10 of them,
Mhm.
and they've been collected. But I also do reviews. Sometimes I just did an essay recently on a poem by Brenda Shaughnessy, rather, in Pleiades, talking about risk. So,
Not too many poets these days traffic in reviews too. I think it's a shame. I think,
I
but
agree, yeah.
but that's because everybody's afraid of offending everybody else. And you name names. You were pretty harsh to the so-called language poets, but also what you see as the more facile kind of joke-like poets.
Could you stop there for a sec? What do you
Yeah.
mean by a language poet?
Completely immersed in the
Pirate-
pyrotechnics, rather, of language, I guess, rather than the content. So much more interested in how surface is manipulated rather than whether there's something to be expressed under the surface.
And so language poets or poets you would say have less content or less worried about content or
Yes,
meaning.
Correct.
Less,
Yes.
and more interested simply in how to play
how
with
to
play with
manipulate
the words.
materials and
Would you
more
compare
abstract,
it? Would you
more
compare it to
abstract.
abstract
Yeah, I would.
painting in a
Uh-huh.
sense,
Yep.
where what you're looking at is you're being made aware of the medium, the lines, the paint on canvas, rather than the content.
Yeah,
of the
that's a
work.
great way to describe
Mhm.
it. Yes, I would say that. So I spent some time talking about that kind of poetry, and also the flip side, which is too clear,
Mhm.
and that was called "If Only I Couldn't Understand Them."
Right.
And the language poetry one was called "Incoherence."
Mhm.
So you can tell from the titles.
And in the poetry biz world, did you take some hits for that? Because people
well,
are
there's
generally
still, the hits keep coming on. Yeah, the hits don't stop.
And the
They-
hits keep
they
coming.
just keep
Okay.
coming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You went to UMass.
Yes, I did.
And actually, a couple of magazines I think that came out of the UMass, or some of the magazines that you were less happy with, or I think Fence. Is that kind of a
no,
UMass?
Well, Fence is not from UMass. I think some of the people connected with Fence, though, might be.
Mhm. So
yeah.
do you feel? I mean, lately in the news, there have been a couple of major publications where they're saying that all their reviews are going to be positive from now on because
yeah.
so few people read in any case. That why hold something up that maybe 100 poets know about and take it to task?
Yeah.
And what's your take?
My feeling is that that if you're in the field, you care about the field and you care about the writing. In some ways, it's I felt it was a little dismissive and insulting to me and my dedication to the field
Mhm.
and passion for it to kind of gloss over or put forward in blurb things that were not of good quality. It was making it seem like those who were working hard and had better quality work, it was all one wash. It didn't. So it seemed to be trivializing it. Trivializing the field. Yeah.
So I encourage people to go to Joan's website to read both. I think you have a link to some of the reviews and to read the poems there.
I do.
Because, it really, for me, it was wonderful to see your engagement of, with the wider community, which is something that you just don't see nowadays. There aren't too many Randall Jarrells still around who are, tackling the real issues of poetry and taking it seriously. And I think that same seriousness of purpose is in your books, and you can read, the us and I. You think of it as one long poem. Are you continuing with these, or
that's a good question. I've changed course a little bit. I've still been in that world, shall we say, for a while. So I'm let's say I'm on the cusp. I'm still doing some from that, and starting another world. Yeah.
Do these two books tell one long story?
Yes.
This is like one long
This is a
narrative
sequel.
story.
I is a sequel to the us. Yes.
And so the themes, it literally has one could read it with almost as a novel, but
Yeah, it carries through.
Yeah, you actually have in the essays actually notes for the poems that kind of tell you what's going to happen. Like the us tell us of their misfortunes on the isle. I sees what looks like an empty vessel coming to shore. So almost like a Greek chorus comes along.
Right.
Wonderful books. Again, Joan Houlihan tonight, 7:30, Smith College. Stoddard Auditorium. I encourage everybody to show up. You're listening to Northampton Poetry Radio on WHMP with Bill Newman and Monty.